Okay, and now it's time for our weekend recap. We're going to kick it off with the shock upset loss for David Morell at the hands of little-known area fighter Jack Chelli, who nobody expected to pull the upset. He was a 15-1 underdog. I didn't even bother with the fight.
That is, I didn't discuss it in any segment of the relay in the build-up. I didn't really think about it. I think it was implied.
I think if you would have asked most people who's going to win that fight, most, if not everybody, would have said David Morell. And what we saw in the fight is David Morell is doing what he does, bouncing in and out of range, landing punches here and there while he does it, but also taking punches. What was noticeable is Jack Chelli had the heavier shots. He seemed the stronger fighter of the two, even if he wasn't the better boxer. Very awkward.
Not having the same amateur pedigree as David Morell, nowhere near his hype.
Now, Jack Chelli was losing this thing. He was on his way to lose a points decision before he pours it on David Morell in the corner and stops him in the 10th.
After a punishing ninth that David Morell was quite fortunate to survive, saved by the bell at the very end after being clocked with a devastating overhand right.
He was getting beat up at the end of the 9th and getting beat up again at the very end of the 10th and final round of what was this short notice fight. Remember, originally, David Morell was supposed to be facing Callum Smith in defense of Callum's WBO interim title up until Callum got injured. Hindsight being 2020.
Callum would have beat him.
It's no revisionist version of history to say that if you can't make it past a part-time boxer, a school teacher, who moonlights as a boxer, you likely wouldn't have made it past Callum.
Jack Chelli is a school teacher?
Not just a school teacher, but an area-level fighter at the most, up until yesterday, up until he barrels forward and backs David Morell into a corner, stopping him on his feet. The explanation that I'm seeing from a lot of people is that David Morell was never the same fighter after having fought David Benavidez.
Then why'd the bookies have him a 15-1 favorite?
They're saying that the beating that he took at the hands of David Benavidez left him so scarred, so irreparably damaged, that that's how you can explain how he's been looking, except I saw that fight with David Benavidez.
He wasn't battered or bloodied in that fight. He wasn't knocked out. He wasn't even knocked down. David's the one who got knocked down in that fight.
That fight was competitive in spots, and David Morell did not take so much punishment that he was irreparably damaged by it as a result, and
That's no explanation.
That's just a lot of people who overhype a lot of fighters trying to save face for their miscalculations, the way they evaluate fighters, because they're hyping up David Benavidez for beating David Morell.
But who the fuck is David Morell?
In the spirit of transparency, I used to think that David Morell might beat David Benavidez. There was a time,
Very briefly.
when they were both at super middleweight, and then I saw David Morell look bang average with a gatekeeper in Radavalle Kalajdzic. That's when I knew this guy ain't it. This guy's not elite.
He's got no elite level wins over any elite level fighters in between 168 and 175. And if you have to languish with the likes of a Radavalle Kalajdzic,
And it was at that point that I knew David Benavidez was going to beat this guy. It was just a question of how, that maybe David Morell has the right style for the job, but not enough experience, a few good ingredients that won't quite come together on the night. And they didn't.
now people are acting like he's so irreparably damaged as a result of the David Benavidez fight when he was looking bang average before he fought David Benavidez, before David beat him.
He stinks out the joint with Radavalle Kalajdzic, loses to David Benavidez,
Arguably loses to Imam Kitayev after that, and he lost yesterday to Jack Chelli because maybe David Morell just isn't that good, and he never was. There's no evidence of his eliticism before or after he fought David Benavidez at 168 or 175.
If you're gonna say that a guy is good, you have to have something more to show for it than just an eye test, some evaluation that the fight fans are making from home. If a guy's good, what good fighters did he beat?
I asked this question on X.
Only for veteran commentator Al Bernstein to tell me that that's a different David Morell. Different guy. I wasn't aware there were two of them.
There aren't. They're just making excuses to save face.
Making excuses to save face for themselves and the fighter that they put on a pedestal, because David Morell has no elite level wins over any elite level fighters during the broadcast. They were talking about this guy being a two-weight world champion?
What?
Because he held the WBA regular title at 168 and a WBA regular title at 175.
Who would he win it from?
David Morell's entire run at 168 seems like a blur because he didn't fight any fighters worth remembering, but I suppose that
He must have picked up a vacant regular title along the way, and we know that the one he won at 175 was vacant because he got that one after making his debut in the Kalajdzic fight.
the one people thought that he lost?
One in the same, and there is the true value, the true merit of those WBA regular titles. You're handing them out to fighters like Halloween candy, not because they mean anything or are an earmark of elitism, but so that you can collect more sanctioning fees from more fighters. Fighters that just aren't that good.
Like David Morell. What's supposed to be one of the better wins on David Benavidez's resume, reason for you to look at him as being elite.
Victory that's aging like an avocado.
They really had the nerve, the audacity to call this guy a two-weight world champion when last I checked, Canelo Alvarez was undisputed champion at super middle while David Morell was there.
And when David Morell moved up, the WBA champion, the full one, was Artur Beterbiev, then Dmitry Bivol. David Morell himself.
David Morell just isn't that good. He's another media creation like David Benavidez. If I'm lying, what was his signature win at 168? What was his signature win at 175? Who is it that this guy beat that proved he was elite?
Nobody. They just kept saying that over and over.
There's no way this guy is an elite level fighter and he gets beat by a part-time boxer, a school teacher, moonlighting as a boxer. There's no fucking way. Many times have you heard boxing fans here in the United States refer to the fighters across the pond as Euro bums.
Many times have you heard boxing fans here in the United States say that the British fighters just ain't that good.
Can't be that bad if you've got school teachers beating up standout amateurs.
It's pathetic.
In a very general sense, I've never been sold on the eliticism of Cuban fighters. The Cuban fighter in particular, because they get a lot of praise for La Finca, their amateur system that has produced a lot of medalists
The farm.
in the amateurs.
Except that this ain't the amateurs, this is the pros, and in my humble opinion, what I see about the Cuban fighters is a lot of them are choke artists. They're good enough to compete up until a certain point, but when it counts, they choke.
If I had to pinpoint where exactly things start to go wrong for David Morell, it's when he debuts as a light heavyweight, because he'd been looking all right up until that point, fighting who he was fighting. But bear in mind, who he was fighting at 168, none of those guys were good. None of those guys were elite. Though he had been looking all right up until that point, up until he debuts at 175 and starts to unravel with Kalajdzic. And he hasn't looked good since. Didn't look good with Kalajdzic or Benavidez or Katayev, much less yesterday getting stopped in the corner by an area-level fighter.
So what happens now?
I don't think a lot of people really care what happens to David Morell at this point. That's the cold, hard truth about boxing. And as far as Jack Chelli, maybe he will now face Callum Smith for the WBO interim title in place of David Morell because he just beat him.
I remember Eddie Hearn saying that they were looking to reschedule Smith versus Morell, provided that Morell made it past Jack Chelli, which he didn't.
So now it's probably going to be Smith versus Chelli, which I think is a less expensive fight to make than Smith versus Morell. That might be how it breaks down, and if it does, I got Callum Smith,
I think he stops Jack Chelli.
who already has 3 recorded losses, in case you didn't know. He's been beat before, just not by David Morell.
He doesn't suddenly become this irresistible force, this indomitable fighter, because he beat David Morell, because David Morell was never any of those things.
If they put him in the ring with Callum Smith, I've got Callum Smith. I trust him enough that he won't lose to a part-time boxer.
None of David Benavidez's wins are aging well.
Not a single one. I mean, David Morell just lost to Jack Chelli. Before that, Caleb Plant lost to Armando Resendiz Vazdik.
He just got knocked out by Kalajdzic.
And is it my imagination, or are these fighters losing in worse fashion to other fighters than they lost to David?
Guy's overhyped, man.
And a lot of his victories are not aging well. But one that did is Alexander Usyk's victory over Daniel Dubois, that is now a 2-time heavyweight champion, having upset Fabio Wardley for the brown belt.
I struck out on this one. I got it wrong. I tentatively picked Fabio Wardley to win the fight by way of knockout, knowing there's a strong chance I'll strike out. There's a strong chance I'll get it wrong.
The fight could go either way. There's a credible argument that Fabio wins, that Daniel wins. They're both flawed fighters with a big punch. and that's what creates that environment. Daniel doesn't move his head, but Fabio doesn't move it either.
The bookies had Fabio as the favorite going in, likely because Daniel was still coming off that knockout loss to Usyk.
Whereas Fabio was on a tier, those come-from-behind wins over Huni, over Parker. It's the funniest thing because everything that I thought would happen did happen. I thought that Fabio Wardley's going to end up landing that right hand on Daniel early because Daniel's going to be aggressive. He's going to go for it early. He's going to stand in front of him, and he's going to get caught. And he did get caught in round 1 and round 3.
The right hand landed, and what I thought would happen did happen. What I didn't think was that Daniel would get up.
That was the scenario that I went with, that Fabio's going to land the right hand early and go home early. The second scenario, the one where Daniel wins.
That happened too.
I just figured that while Fabio Wardley's power, that right hand cannon, has bailed him out of fights that he was losing, his last 2 fights, this fight's a bit different. You can't afford to get hit by Daniel as much as you got hit by Justice Huni, as much as you got hit by Joseph Parker, because you may not get the chance to come from behind with him. He hits a lot harder than them, and that is what happened. Daniel Dubois surviving the early onslaught using his jab.
That's how he beat him.
In the end, it wasn't a mammoth right hand or a sharp left hook. It was the jab that undressed Fabio Wardley. He couldn't get out of the way of that thing.
That's what broke him down.
Daniel Dubois was painting his face with that lead hand, with that jab. In the build-up of the fight, I said it wouldn't take much from Daniel Dubois to split open Fabio Wardley's nose that has noticeable scar tissue over it.
Looked terrible. Looked like he got hit with a baseball bat.
A very tough man, too tough for his own good, but sometimes tough ain't enough.
He never lost his footing. He didn't get knocked down in the fight,
But he did get beat the fuck up. Oh, he got beat the fuck up, and there were questions as to whether or not the fight shouldn't have been stopped earlier.
should Ben Davison have not thrown in the towel earlier? Should the third man in the ring, the ref, should he have not waved it off earlier? Because for large spells, it's really just Fabio getting beat the fuck up.
Bloodied.
Though context is key, believe it or not, I understand why they let the fight go on. It's because Fabio Wardley has become known for coming back, come from behind wins over Justice Huni, over Joseph Parker. When things were looking bleak, Fabio found a way.
So they allowed him time to do that, to try and find a way, try and fight back, which he was, but to no avail.
He's getting beat the fuck up.
Daniel, being the younger man, is also the more experienced fighter in the fight. He has been in there with the better fighters compared to Fabio, and all of those experiences came together yesterday when he outboxed Fabio Wardley, because in many ways that's what he did. It wasn't a monster right hand or a big left hook and uppercut. It was really the jab that won Daniel the fight. Good distance control and usage of the lead hand.
That's what set everything else up.
It's not a bad thing that Daniel Dubois beat Fabio Wardley. I think the WBO title would have been in good hands in either outcome, in either event, if Fabio won or Daniel won, because the one thing about these two guys is they're willing to fight people.
Remember, Fabio Wardley chose to fight this guy. He was given 4 names, and of the 4, he chose to fight the most dangerous guy.
He chose Daniel, and Daniel grabbed that opportunity with both hands. Daniel, who's been in there with Jarrell Miller, Philippe Prgovic, Anthony Joshua, Joe Joyce, Usyk 2 times.
He's won some fights, and he's lost some fights, all of which lend themselves to his experience and ability as a fighter. Don Charles and Daniel make a great team. So when he smacked the shit out of him in the corner 2 times, getting him to wake up,
they got a good synergy, those two, and that's why I was against Daniel Dubois swapping him out for Tony Sims, I think it was?
You remember that from a few months ago? He ended up going back to Don, and obviously he made the right decision in doing so. The ends gotta justify the means.
What happens now?
Well, obviously Fabio's gotta take time to heal, time to recover. That was a punishing fight, and poor Fabio, he's been in a few of those to where maybe he should sit out the rest of the year, at minimum the entirety of the summer, before coming back.
Do you think there will be a rematch?
I think that's possible, and I think that Fabio could have a resurgence. I mean, look at Daniel Dubois, for example. When he loses to Joe Joyce and, takes a knee, decides not to get up, who would have thought that this is the same guy who's going to be a 2-time heavyweight champion? When he loses those 2 fights to Usyk.
The first time he lost to Usyk, who would have thought he's going to beat Jarrell Miller, he's going to beat Philippe Prgovic, he's going to knock out Anthony Joshua? This is with 2 losses in the column.
With 3, he just went in there, beat the odds, beat Fabio Wardley to become a 2-time heavyweight champion. So thinking about him, and now that Fabio has to go back to the drawing board, I'm not going to count him out.
Maybe he can recover, rebuild, and have a resurgence. I'm not going to count him out. It was a punishing fight.
But if Daniel Dubois taught us anything, is don't count the guy out.
So I'm not going to count Fabio Wardley out. Maybe he can come back from this. As far as Daniel, he's now WBO champion, which means he's in line for Moses Itelma, who is their #1 contender. Both boys are Frank's boys.
Easy in-house fight to make, though I don't think he makes it right away. Moses Itelma is supposed to be coming back over the summer months against an opponent that has yet to be announced, and I don't expect it to be anybody too dangerous.
I think he fights whoever he's gonna fight over the summer months, then maybe after that Frank makes the fight with Daniel.
Because Moses Itelma is still a very young fighter, Frank and George don't have to be in any hurry to do that fight. They could do it at the end of this year just as easily as they could do it at some point in the next one. There's no real rush to do that fight, but that is the fight I think they're going to do. When Fabio had the belt, there wasn't much chance of him facing Moses because they're stablemates. They're both trained by Ben Davison. But now that Daniel has it, well, that changes everything.
I remember Fabio saying in the build-up that the only way that he would fight Moses Itelma is if Moses collected one portion of the alphabet titles and he held the others. That would be the only way, and that would have to be very far down the line. Seems that it won't have to come to that.
Moses could end up fighting for the brown belt after all. Now that Fabio ain't got it, Daniel's got it.
What are Moses Itelma's chances against Daniel Dubois? Could Moses Itelma succeed where Fabio Wardley has failed? And I would dare say yes. At the risk of underestimating Daniel Dubois again, for me it's simple. If Fabio Wardley can connect with a devastating right hand, not once but twice, in the early goings of a fight with Daniel, Moses can do that and more. He can do better than that.
Fabio's a good fighter, so I'm not poo-pooing on him. But Fabio is not as highly touted, as talented as Moses Itelma. He doesn't have as many tools as that fighter. So if Fabio can catch you not once but twice with the same punch and put you down, I think Moses can do more than that. It's really just a question of how soon does Queensbury want to make this fight, because it's up to them.
And it'll be a pay-per-view just like yesterday's fight. Make no mistake, it's their mission to make Moses Itelma a box office attraction.
Speaking of yesterday's fight, I would say that was fight of the year so far.
Yeah, I would say that's the best fight that I've seen so far, with the most seesaw action, more ebbs and flows than Benavidez versus Zerto or Inoue versus Nakatani.
Wardley versus Dubois, at least right now, is my front runner for fight of the year. That was pure entertainment, pure action, and the kind of fight that brings people to combat sports in front of a sold-out crowd at the Co-op Live Arena.
Remember when Ring Magazine said they were struggling to sell tickets? They fucking lied.
Great fight.